Happy Monday, May 4th, everybody. Today is your guys' final lecture, final demo. Congrats on getting to the end. I hope that this semester has been really fun and a cool growth experience for you guys. I know a lot of people like to feel as if, drawing is very difficult and that they can't do it, and it's very almost regarded only for people who have the talent for it. And I hope that this semester has taught you that that's not true, that anyone can draw, and it's really if I could leave you with anything, it's really just a muscle, just like anything else. You just got to train your brain, train your eye, train your hands, and you could draw or communicate pretty much anything. I'm kind of thinking about maybe doing one last video for Wednesday, not a demo or a lecture, but just kind of like one last hurrah, goodbye, thank you, maybe a parting word or two. Pretty sappy, most likely, but it seems like something that I would do, I guess. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, today we are going to be talking about hands. So why are we talking about hands? Let's take that, okay, and boom. Okay, so at the beginning of the semester, I talked to you guys about, in really broad terms, of like what is sketching and visual communication for. And so, whoops, that's not correct. One thing that I was gonna like whiteboard this out. So let's see, objects, let's go context. That's not like environment 2, and then story. Yeah, okay, this works. Okay, so basically in this class, obviously we've been right here learning how to draw objects, perspective, simple shapes, evolving all the way up to organic forms, how to construct things, how to place them on a page, composition, all that jazz. And so if you were to go down the rabbit hole even further into this idea and industry of visual communication and design sketching, the next level would start to experience, you would start to experience this context. So that could be things like scale. And one of the ways to explore scale is hands. So what do we mean by scale? Scale is like, how large is an object? So right now, all we've done is put an object on the page and then put some information about it, right? And then maybe giving it a little shadow. But how big is this object, right? We don't know. We don't know where it really belongs. But again, going down like the rabbit hole per se, we would start to explore scale. What is the environment that that object exists in? And then there are some other kinds of elements to that too, with scale and environment being the big ones. And then even further would be story. So what's the process? Like, what kind of system does this object or solution fit into? And this really gets into things like storyboarding. So like, let's say, you have an object, but to understand the object and its reason for being, you need a series of steps to explain how it works. Much like, assembling a piece of furniture, or learning how to use a new app, or something to that degree. So remember, like, we are here, and I want to show this kind of stuff for just a hot second to sort of begin that bridge. If you guys eventually do end up moving forward into these next realms that are super, super exciting, you at least have a bit of exposure and maybe could at least take your first baby steps. Okay, so let's do a quick dive into some Pinteresty stuff. Okay, so hands probably sound overwhelming. But just like I've tried to remind you guys over and over again, everything can be deconstructed into basic shapes, even hands, even bodies, blah, blah, blah. So, like, now obviously there are a great variety of fidelity levels, like how detailed, how accurate do you want to be, but they could also be very cartoony too. So I wanted to pull up this sketch because it's very, very simple. It's very like cartoony and easy to understand. There's not a whole lot of detail. So this hand next to step 3 or whatever, like so simple, so like not difficult at all, but clearly communicates, hey, there's maybe a button here, something to interact with your hands. Some other examples, like this is a little bit higher fidelity. They're getting into some shading and stuff, but great examples nonetheless. This is a nice one too. I mean, there's a lot of really good examples online of hands. This looks kind of complicated. We're not going to go that deep for now. And there was another picture. Oh yeah. Okay, so getting into context of like, the idea of story, of process, of communicating the functionality of something, hands can really be monumental in that effort. And again, like I pointed out before, they can also communicate scale. Oh, also quick, not caveat, but reminder, you don't have to do hands. This is kind of a more for fun thing. I wanted to try and do something that was maybe more challenging than what we've done before and build on our skills. So this is not required though. Ooh, that's nice. Those are really nice. These are all pretty nice actually. Okay. Yeah, here's another one where if you start involving color, like then it's just another neat way of further communicating ideas, functionalities, etc. That's cool too. Oh, I had to do an assignment like this when I was in school, like opening a pill bottle, draw it with hands. So now that you guys have a little bit of idea into what this could look like, what the possibilities are, and maybe some of the intention behind it, assuming that my ideas are fairly valid, let's just jump right in. Okay, so I personally like to think of hands as, again, we're going to deconstruct it. So it's just a series of parts. So I think of a palm as kind of being like a rectangular prism. So I'm going to look at my own hand right now, and you guys could follow along if you wanted. Try and put your hand in a position that you think is fairly reasonable. So I'm going to put my palm up. So I'm going to say, here's the bottom of my palm, and then there's the side, and the side, and then the top. So this is where my fingers are going to be attached. This is where my thumb is attached, and this is where my wrist is going to go. Okay, so I'm going to turn that plane into a rectangular prism. So it's a little bit below the horizon because my eyes are above my hand. So I'm going to give it some mass. Boom. There it is. And now my fingers are attached, like I said, on this plane. And fingers are pretty cylindrical for the most part. So I'm going to imagine 4 ellipses on this plane. And then I'm going to put some space for my thumb, which is going to be right there. And thumbs are actually pretty big. So instead of doing a perfect ellipse, I'm going to make it kind of larger. Okay, and then, of course, wrists are not rectangular prisms. They're kind of elliptical. So I'm going to say, there's the beginning of my wrist. Okay, so now we have basically the elements of a hand. Personally, what I do from here, this is just my process. I don't know if there's like a right and true way to draw hands. There's probably a bazillion, but this is the way I do it. Kind of like the way a stop motion puppet character model would be constructed with metal wires that can be bent. I'm going to imagine if the bones of my fingers and thumb were wires or just like lines. So I'm going to say like, there's the first digit of my fingers. If you guys didn't know, fingers are broken down into digits, and there's the second digit of my thumb. Thumbs have 2 digits, fingers have 3. So then I'll say first, second, third, first, second, third, first, second, third, first, second, third. And I think everyone's hands are obviously a little bit different. Mine personally, my first digit is longer than the second, and the second is longer than the third. So they get incrementally smaller. And that's just me personally. Then what I do next is I imagine those wires, these things right here, becoming cylinders. So I'll say, okay, here's that cylinder, but I'm not going to go, let's see, yeah, I can go ahead and do it actually. There's that, and then the next cylinder being attached there, and then the last digit is a little bit different. We'll come back to that. So there's that. Here's a cylinder. Here's a cylinder. Here's a cylinder. A slightly smaller cylinder. Smaller again. Smaller. Okay. So now I kind of already have this. Oh God, what's that villain's name? Freddy Krueger. Yeah, Freddy Krueger looking hand, and now I need to finish it off. This is actually the only part that I would consider difficult about a hand, and that's the last digit of the fingers. They're very strange shapes in my opinion. I don't really have anything to compare them to. So from the top view, I would say that most fingers are kind of like that. So there's the top view. But then from the side, you have the fingernail, this part, and then they kind of curve around like that. So they're almost like a pill shape, the one that we practiced kind of towards the beginning of the semester, like that, except you kind of smush it on that side. Give it a smush. And that's how I personally think about fingernails. So then for this one, that would be the fingernail. And then the wrinkle for your knuckle would be right there. Something like that. So this, I feel like, just takes a lot of practice to figure out how to draw in perspective. I think the best thing for you to do is look at your hand and try and mimic it. I have some experience with this, so I feel like I kind of have at least a gist, but I believe in you guys. Should definitely be able to. Oops. Oh, my middle finger is the longest one, so it should technically be higher than the index. So you can think about it kind of like that. And then personally, my pinky finger is pretty small. Okay, so now we've got the tips of our fingers, little sausagey kind of things. And then pretty much from here, the next thing that I personally do is you kind of just like round everything out or put in some chunky stuff here and there. So like for me, and I think most people, there's a lot of like, oh, that works. There's a lot of skin, tissue, muscle here and here. And again, you can look at your hand for that, move it around, see how it like flexes and moves. Also, there's a lot of extra skin in this area right here to help your thumb move quite a bit. So there's definitely going to be some wrinkles and some folding of skin here. And then that could even happen over here too. And then, okay, I think that's pretty good. We're pretty set up. So, okay, now we're just gonna basically connect everything. Your arm is a really long cylinder that gets like a little bit thicker towards your elbow, depending on like your muscles and stuff. And then you have a little bit of a bump where your wrist is, where your wrist connects. I have not taken anatomy, so I don't know all the names of these things, but some of you probably have and know. And then basically, I'm just gonna think about this line connecting here. And then there's my knuckle. There's my thumb. I'm gonna build in that wrinkle. And now I'm basically just gonna imagine, so there is a knuckle back here, so I'll put some extra mass, but essentially this is just gonna connect to there. And then my finger comes out like this. I'm gonna put a little bit of some overlap just to make it look a little bit more finger-like, and that'll get more dramatic the more you bend it. Okay, and then there's just a little bit of like skin / webbing in there. Personally, my middle finger is the fattest one. That didn't come out super well. Okay, and then lastly, like I said, there's some extra meat there, so I'm just gonna basically bulge that out and then pull that in. Okay, so by no means is this a wonderful hand, of course. There's a lot of funky stuff going on over here. This looks like it got pulled out too far. I should probably see a little bit of fingernail over here, and maybe even there too. Probably not there. But this is just a way of understanding it if you don't want to like just purely try and look at it and start from one, like if you were to just stare at your hand and try and draw it. That's another method. Oops. Yeah. So, there's some ways to draw hands. So let's think about, or let's practice applying that. So maybe you followed along, maybe you sketched your hand. Let's think about holding an object. So let's start with maybe a cylinder. So right here I have a cylindrical object. So let's draw that. So I'll draw my cylinder first. And if you guys want to follow along, that'd be awesome. Okay, so here's my cylinder, and I'm holding it in my left hand while I'm drawing. Another thing is that there's so many hand model images online where if you say needed a hand position that you couldn't like replicate yourself or something, I would say just Google it, Pinterest. If you subscribe to Adobe stock has just like this unbelievable spectrum of stock content. So if you go to your Adobe Creative Cloud Manager, hit the stock button under extra whatevers, and then search hands, it'll bring up a million things. Okay, so here we've got a cylinder, and I'm gonna draw a hand gripping it. So if I think about where my hand is in terms of a rectangular prism, it's behind it. So there's my wrist, and then it comes this way. My thumb is kind of like here, and then my fingers start over there. And then I'll just draw my wrist. Okay, there's my wrist. And now my thumb starts here. There's 1 and 2. My index finger actually starts kind of over here and goes up, over, down. I only can see 2 digits of the remaining 3 fingers, so I'll just draw those. Middle, ring, and pinky. And now I'll turn those into cylinders. And my pinky finger is kind of hiding behind my ring finger. Okay, and then my knuckle is over there, so I'm going to draw some extra space for that. And now here's my thumb. And there's that sausagey kind of part. And there's a bunch of wrinkles in here. That will go from a leading edge line like that. And my index finger is there. It looks like it comes over just a little bit. And then there's where it ends. And you can see my fingernail right there. Do something similar for, oops, my middle finger, fingernail, ring finger, and my pinky. Okay, and then basically just need to bring this around. Boom. Give that the leading edge line. And then if I wanted to go one more step, I could give it just a little bit of shading so that it goes into the hand. Oh, I didn't draw the top of my thumb and my fingernail. I think it'd be kind of like that. And then if I were to put a shadow on this, assuming my light source is over here, and this would probably be shaded too. And then my fingers would produce a little bit of a shadow. Okay, so there's one hand. So if I were to clean this up just a hair, see what this looks like without so many sketch marks and lines and shit. Boom. So now, like, you know, so sort of imagine just all the potential applications. This could be like a bajillion things, right? The cylinder, like, there's just so many options of how you could apply the same principle. So let's think of something else. How about a almost like a bottle? So if you have a water bottle, this would be a great opportunity to go grab that. I just grabbed a cup that's sitting on my desk full of pens, and then put your hand around it with your palm kind of facing back. So this time I'll draw a big cylinder. So let's say something kind of like this. Something kind of like that. So once again, I think my palm kind of starts back here and goes this way, which means my wrist is here and goes down, out. Give that some mass. My thumb is kind of here again. Now my finger starts back here, comes back and out and around. I can see almost 2 full digits of my middle finger. I can definitely see 2 digits of my ring finger, and then my pinky is actually kind of supporting this from the bottom. Okay, so my thumb comes out quite a bit, and it actually stops up here. So again, cylinder, and then make it chunky. That's not there. Okay. And now we're going to imagine that this cylinder is opaque, that you can't see through it. The thing that I'm holding is transparent, but that'd be a mess for now. So here's my fingernail. Fingernails do a lot of good, even though they can look really funky in showing like the direction or like how rotated your finger is. So I would recommend doing it. And if you don't want to draw the full fingernail, maybe as a compromise, you could just do, oh god, more anatomy stuff. Cuticle? I think that's the word. Basically just where your fingernail like goes into your finger. So you're not having to draw like the whole thing. So you could try that. Okay, so like I said before, I can't see more than 1 digit of my index finger, and I'm only seeing the bottom side. So I think it'd be kind of like that. I can kind of see part of the top of my middle finger, and it sort of goes over. There's some overlap. And there's the end of my fingernail. So I'm actually doing the reverse. Instead of drawing the cuticle, if that's what it's called, I'm drawing the front edge. Okay, and then that's coming out from there. I think my finger got a little big there. Okay, and then last but not least, my pinky finger. And you can pretty much see my entire fingernail, so I'll draw the whole thing. Okay. Oops. Got too much stuff on my desk. Okay. And I'll erase some stuff, clean it up a bit. Erase those wire lines, the simplification of my bones, my finger. Okay, and then I could put some surface contour lines on there if I wanted. Maybe once again, if the lighting well, actually this time, so if the lighting source is that way for this one, let's imagine it this way for this one. So we might have some stuff going on there. Definitely some shading there. This cylinder would have, definitely have a shadow. Probably would actually be more than that. I think this whole thing would be in shadow. But that doesn't look nice. Boom. Okay. There's 2. Let's do some more. Okay, what is another common? Let's jump over to Pinterest again to see, grab some inspiration. Okay, there's a good one, like pulling something. Or in my case, I'll hold. I have an eraser on my desk. I'm gonna hold that eraser between my index finger and my thumb. So I'm going to say my palm is kind of like this, and my wrist is kind of like that. And then my thumb is there. My 4 fingers are, that was really bad, right there. Okay, and then my index finger kind of looks like that. Maybe actually more like that. And then my other fingers are all curled inwards, but I can see part of my middle finger there. Okay, so I can see my wrist there, so I'll put a bump, and then it comes up. Meanwhile, over here, there's a lot of like mass, muscle, tissue there, so that's going to be nice and gradual, but have a big bump. And then there's a bunch of like wrinkles and stuff in here where my skin is folding over. Okay, and now cylinder, cylinder, and little tip of my finger. And now draw in real quick. Oops, that actually overlaps my finger a bunch more. That's my eraser. And then my middle finger is basically going to disappear back behind there, just like the other, my pinky, my ring. Okay, then last, I'm just going to draw my middle finger, which is hanging out back there. Okay. And there's another hand. Clean it up. So one thing that I would warn is if, you know, for whatever reason you're interested in trying to do, oh man, a little bit more detail than this, just be aware that the more lines that you add, the like more aged or like older the skin is going to look. So if I wanted to draw in my knuckles, for instance, I could put them in kind of like that. And then if you say like, oh, I want to show really detailed where the knuckles are, and say like, oh, there's some and there's some, and maybe there's some stuff there or some stuff there. Maybe my like tendons or whatever, which you can actually see in my hand. Even when I'm just holding this, you can see them. But the more and more like stuff that you put in to your sketch, the more like older looking, the more like wrinkly your skin is going to look. So yeah, so look, just alone, like those few extra details here, here, the knuckles, the wrinkles of my knuckles, like this could be the hand of a fairly older person really easily. So don't let yourself get carried away with those little details. I would keep it much more simple, as simple as possible, basically, for these kinds of sketches. Now, granted, if you were developing a product or a solution for an elderly person, and you were trying to tell the story of your product, that would make a lot of sense. So, just something to think about. Also, I think that whole part, yeah, that's better. Okay, so there's hand number 3. I think we should do at least a few more let's jump back to Pinterest for some more inspiration. Pointing, that one's already being shown. Let's see. Oh, why did all the hand suggestions disappear? Okay, we already did one kind of like that with the cylinder. Oh yeah, here's a nice illustration. Sort of a similar thing, except they broke down what I considered a rectangular prism into a kind of like web, where each knuckle is essentially like a point, and then you connect all of them with like a web-like shape. These hands look really nice. Oh yeah, here's a bunch of good content too. Yeah, like I said, there's a bajillion hand model content type imagery online. You just gotta know where to look for it. Okay. Kind of wanted to do 4. Okay, let me keep looking for a second for any other. All right, sorry for that weird interruption, everybody. My iPad unexpectedly just like turned off, but somehow saved the video and everything. So, okay, getting back. One hand that I want to do next is like if you're holding a phone. So I know that with like UX projects, people who design like screens, interfaces, etc., experiences, it could be fun to sketch a hand for that, to show off that kind of project. So I'm gonna imagine a phone being kind of like this rectangular prism, and then maybe kind of like that. We might just barely see the top. Okay, so once again, starting with the base of my wrist or the bottom of my palm, I'm imagining it kind of like that, or imagining I'm looking at it and it looks kind of like that, and then maybe something kind of like this, but my wrist is kind of going that way. So I think my arm would be kind of there and there. Okay, my thumb is sort of here. Palm curves around there. My index finger goes there. My thumb goes here. I'm gonna see part of my middle finger there, part of my ring finger here, and then my pinky's down there supporting the phone. So I'll start this, and then that will come out. Like so. And then my nail is right there. Got a knuckle right there. That basically just comes down. Okay, but I don't really see almost any of my index finger, except for that. Okay, and then I got jig. Boom. But I will see part of my middle finger, but no fingernail. A little bit more of my ring finger, but I will see part of my fingernail. And then lastly, a little bit of my pinky supporting my phone right there. And then there's the bottom, the base of my palm. Boom, and there's a phone. So if we were to clean this up a little bit, maybe something kind of like that. Okay, so there's 4. Let's jump back to Pinterest. Maybe we can find one more thing. I think I saw somebody holding a pair of scissors. That was a good one. There's a golf club. Buttons, holding things, pulling things, and then we have this paper ice cube looking thing. Holding chopsticks. Ooh, chopsticks would be really cool. So there's that backpack sketch right there, kind of in the center. There's another example of like, you're showing off a product, you're using a human to show scale, you're using like a little bit of like terrain to show the environment and context. There's some interesting ones like screwdriver. That looks kind of like a wallet. We sort of did those. Maybe we could do, what if we did a door handle? Yeah, we didn't do anything quite like that. Okay, so let's imagine a door handle. So let's say this is a not very ergonomic door handle. Very uncomfortable to use. Like most doors. Okay. So there's our cross section. Okay, so, oh geez, I just imagined a right hand using this, but I'm right-handed. So I think that, let's just say that is my palm, and there's the mass of it, and there's my wrist. So if that's the bone of my forearm, then my arm will come out like this and probably curve just a little bit where there's some, I don't know what that muscle's called, but whatever. My thumb will be here, and then I've got one finger okay, I think something like that probably work. Although actually, then my whole palm might be rotated. More that way. That's okay. This is just a rough demo. Okay, so thinking here's a cylinder, and then I think I would see the majority of my fingernail there. I probably wouldn't see almost any of my index finger until the end. My middle finger personally is my longest finger, so I think that I'd see the most of it and probably the least of my pinky finger. And there is my hand wrapping around a door. Probably have some wrinkles going on in there. And I might just barely see my fingernail there. We can put our leading edges. Although there probably wouldn't be a shadow this close to the door handle because doors are tall, there's one anyways. And then if I wanted to put a little bit of shading on there. There's a door. Okay, I think that is what I'm going to conclude with. So just as a reminder, you do not have to sketch hands on assignment 7. This is just something that I wanted to show you, basically for fun. Though if you are feeling confident and want to give it a try, I'm not going to stop you, but I would definitely warn you, do not let it distract from your sketch. If you are using it, if you are going to put hands on your sketch, this line weight is too heavy. This was just to show you how to draw hands. Hands are not the focus point of your sketch. Your object is. This is what's important, not your hands. So I would use a lower line weight. Once again, use a lower line weight than this, lower line weight than that, because your object is what's important. Okay, hopefully this last demo has been exciting. I hope all of your guys' assignment 7s are going well, whether you're drawing earphones, a camera, a large camera, or you decide to do something else and ask me about it. Remember, if you're procrastinating and aren't doing assignment 7 till last second, I probably won't be able to answer all 40 of you in one night if you choose to want to do something different. So please let me know ahead of time. Okay. This concludes the